Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast with Kevin Harrington and Seth Greene. Kevin Harrington is the inventor of the infomercial, one of the original sharks from the hit TV show Shark Tank, and has generated over $5 billion in TV and digital direct response sales. Seth Greene is the world's first trusted authority on cutting-edge direct response marketing, a best-selling author, and the only 3-time Marketer of the Year nominee. On the podcast, Kevin and Seth interview Sharkpreneurs who share straight talk on what it takes to explode your business.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com. Welcome to the podcast. This is your host, Seth Greene. Today, I've got the good fortune to be with the one, the only Rick Jordan. Rick is one of America's leading voices on entrepreneurship, business, and cybersecurity. He has been on ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, CW, Bloomberg, Newsmax. He's spoken for Coca-Cola, NASDAQ, Mercedes-Benz, just about everywhere else. The bio would take the entire 20 minutes that we've got, so we're just going to dive in. Rick, thanks so much for joining us.
Seth, you're awesome. What's shaking, my man?
Well, let's go back in time a little bit. I know, obviously, you speak everywhere. You've been interviewed everywhere, so I don't want to rehash everything. But for our listeners who don't know who you are, give me a how did you get started and how did you get here?
Yeah, that's a great broad question, isn't it? That's funny. Sometimes I go back to, well, my parents had me in 1979,
Right.
as a Blizzard baby, right? But no, a lot of this stuff is really, a big formative moment for me was when my dad passed when I was 16. But even before then, what I look at, my mom tells stories of how I was just maybe 12 or 13 months old. She put me on a horse on a merry-go-round, and I would be the one who was looking up at all the gears, looking in the center to figure out how it was working rather than actually enjoying the ride. Trust me, I love coasters these days too. I still love thrill rides and everything else, but it was more so that curiosity, man. And that I think is something that I've cultivated over the years. And I've talked about this a lot on a lot of different shows because it's a great answer and it's real, that I think everybody needs to understand that curiosity, it was one of the most important trades, skills, talents, whatever you need to have in order to become successful. So if you don't care about what's going on in the world around you, get curious. Because that's the only way you're going to figure out where you need to go, learn your purpose, figure out how to get there, and most importantly, how to help humanity in the process. So beyond that, a lot of scars, a lot of bruises, a lot of mistakes made, a lot of falling on my face to the point to where it's like, wow, I'm glad I've paid so much dummy tax along the way.
That is a great way to put it. I love that answer. And we could do a separate podcast just on some of those things that you've learned. Now, you have a unique skill set in terms of not only the business and cybersecurity expertise, but being able to speak about it in such a way that gets people who normally wouldn't care to care, be interested, and be curious, as you said. So what are some of the ways we as business owners can protect ourselves against cybercrime and lost revenue? And why is that so important?
Yeah, it's a great shift into a completely different topic here too, right? We're going to chop this up at some point for social media, I think, for sure. So with that, you mentioned two things. The first thing, I appreciate the compliment that I'm great at communicating those things. I truly believe that everybody needs to understand communication. It's another skill that you have to build. Putting things in plain language, man. Even like stuff that comes out of Chat GPT these days, it speaks in robot talk unless you tell it not to. Right. So no matter what field you're in, me at cybersecurity, somebody could be hanging cabinets. I don't know. But if they're talking about the right angles and the woods and all that stuff, it's like, what does it matter? Is it going to look good or is it going to fall off the walls? You tell me. I don't care the tools that you're going to use. When it comes to cyber, it's the same thing, because like business owners, like there's a couple of main things that I think everybody should do. Freeze your credit reports. Seriously, like that's nothing that has to do with finding the right IT vendor, finding the right cyber guy. It's something that's completely on you that will protect you from almost all forms of identity theft. Nobody can run your credit without you knowing and without your permission. It's the simplest thing in the world. As soon as you get it set up, I will tell you this, you go to the websites like Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, those are the ones. They're a little hard to navigate. So just pour yourself a glass of scotch. I prefer Macallan before you go to those websites to try to get the apps downloaded and get that done. Now, the second thing to do, this is the most important thing, seriously, multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication. You have to have some other way to authenticate yourself beyond a password. That's just hands down what you need to do. And I know that that phrase is starting to become more and more recognized these days. I mean, I'm sure you've heard it, Seth, right?
I
But
deal with it every day.
right on, yeah. The thing is, in general society, though, there's still a great percentage that don't even know what multi-factor or two-factor is. So the best way I can put it is, for years, I'm talking like 15 years, there have been websites you would sign into that would send you a text message with a code. That is two-factor authentication. It's simply one of two things, right, that happen. It's something you know, which is your password, and it's something you have on your person, which is usually a phone. In the old days, I'm talking old like days when I was with Merrill Lynch 20 years ago, it was a physical key fob you would carry around, right? It would have the numbers on there. You didn't have mobile phones. It would receive text messages. I'm showing my age. I'm really only 45, but I started in IT a long, long time ago, man. It's really those two things, brother. I mean, those are the best things that you need to do. There's, of course, a lot of other questions depending on what kind of industry you're in, like if you're in legal, if you're in healthcare, if you're an accountant, even accountants now, tax preparers. We're getting into tax season, aren't we? I'm looking at the date right here. Those guys, the CPAs, the tax preparers, they have to check a little box now on their registered agent form with the IRS. Every single year, they have to renew their registered agent status. And now they have to check a box that says that they are complying with guidelines for cybersecurity for their CPA firm. And there's a bunch of things that get listed out, including something called an internet security plan. They actually have to have it written. So if you're looking as a small business owner, like you said, for an accountant to prepare your taxes this year, if you're C Corp, S Corp, LLC, whatever it is, ask your registered agent for their information security plan. And it has to be written, and then they will be able to show, oh yeah, here it is. There's nothing personal on there. There's nothing that gives away the farm for, confidential information. They have to have this written in order to maintain legally without any kind of fraud, because it's self-attestation, the registered agent status with the IRS.
Wow. I'll date myself. I also started my original career at Merrill Lynch.
Did you
Um,
really? Awesome.
we could have a separate conversation about that 26 years ago.
Probably different
So,
fields, right?
yes, yes.
Yeah.
So how does you've become kind of, for lack of a better term, like the face of cybersecurity,
Yeah.
the only name people would actually know. How did you accomplish that?
Man, it's a lot of personal branding. That's really it. And it's there's kind of this mantra that I think everybody should carry. It was an old phrase too, maybe now that I think of it, an old quote, like you think, what is it? I think, therefore I become. Is that accurate? I don't remember who said it, man, but it's pretty much, I'll rephrase it when it comes to branding. You say what you are, and then you actually are that. Yeah. So if you say, hey, I'm the expert on cybersecurity, or I'm the expert personal injury firm in Los Angeles, all of a sudden you become that. And it's this art of stepping into something, even though you may not really believe it yourself yet. And then the other thing too is, like, I started my personal brand 6 years ago. It's not like Facebook was new. It's not like Instagram was new, or Twitter at that time. Right now it's X. However, it was new for me to go on TV. It wasn't new for me to be on a stage. I've been speaking for years, but going on TV, doing a personal brand on Instagram, building all that was very new for me. However, just like being curious, something I always talk from stage about, like the tips for success, Rick Jordan's tips for success, you have to be findable. No matter what anybody's looking for to do business with you, or let's even say to date you, there has to be some kind of information out there about you. So what are they going to find? If you Google your name, Seth, right? I'm sure you find some stuff that you like, right? Same thing, because I put effort into it. If Joe down the street Googles and it's like, oh, I have nothing there, or, oh, wait, there's a lawsuit that came up about me from like 10 years ago, and that's the only thing that shows up, that's going to be a problem for people. Problem getting a job, problem doing business, problem finding a romantic partner, all of that. You have to be findable, man. So when you say like, how did I become the face of cybersecurity for this? I just became findable. And the best way to do that is just to start going on shows like yours, right? I mean, I know you're selective on guests like I am on my show right now, but seriously, podcasts are one of the best ways to do that nowadays. Almost anybody will take almost anybody for the most part in the world of podcasting.
Well, I appreciate the shout out. Thank you very much. I love the be findable advice. Declare it, grow into it, and then become it. I'm going to bounce around a little bit because there's so many different topics that you could talk about. How can we as small business owners protect ourselves against the next crisis?
Oh my God, man. There's a lot that's going to be coming down the pipe, and things to look for specifically. I'm hoping, even though generally speaking, if you get into the political stance of who I am, I'm hoping at some point in time there is regulation that comes to our industry in some form or fashion. And so many people are going to hate me for this in my industry. Seriously, I'm the first one to take the company public too. The first one to take an MSP public. I did that 15 months ago. We just finished our reverse merger literally a couple days ago. So we're trading, which is awesome. However, I'm the first one to do that. So there's a lot of people that love me, and unfortunately, there's a lot of people that hate me too, because I represent progress, I represent change. So when it comes to this industry and when it comes to small business owners specifically, find somebody that actually really has the credibility to back them. Because you need help as a small business owner to help you. I said before, like the two things you can do without help are freezing your credit report and two-factor authentication, at least on your own accounts. Beyond that, you need somebody who's credible and you need somebody who's actually been doing this. I'm not saying it's just me. Department of Homeland Security says there's about 8% of us out there that actually really know what we're doing. Yeah, so
That's
imagine
scary.
it is, right? So imagine the 300,000 or 400,000 businesses or even individuals, sole proprietorships that call themselves a managed service provider or a managed security services provider. The government themselves for years has put this number at like 8%, which I can see that, right? I coach individuals and I see the dip in competency. Cybersecurity is no joke. It's constantly changing, constantly evolving. And now this industry is freaking about AI. They think it's going to take their jobs, away from that. And maybe some of them, maybe the low end jobs. But I think just like lawyers, just like accountants, same with the IT firms, you want to look for somebody who's on the forefront of this and actually embracing artificial intelligence because it helps them protect you even better. It helps them stay ahead of the game. I was on a call today with a guy who's doing some really cool things for this industry. He maybe has 7 customers so far. And after I've vetted him now for 6 months, right, I'm like, I think you're great. For one, I asked him like, how do I acquire you? That was my first question, right? And he's like, no, I'm not looking for that right now. I'm like, okay, then I wanna get involved and help you grow this thing because it's going to be on the forefront. He's on a mission to use artificial intelligence and integrate with systems like companies that mine use to completely build an autonomous level 1 technician using AI.
Wow.
It's awesome, right? And I'm like, cool, how can I help you? Because it's going to help the industry as a whole. That's another reason why I took it public. It's like if you find people who are interested in advancing the entire industry rather than those that are just concerned about paying their mortgage, you're going to find somebody who's a little more credible too.
I love that. How do you get that mindset of, because I think so many business owners are, as you mentioned, trying to pay the mortgage, keep the lights on, pay the bills, keep
Yeah.
people, keep their team paid. How do you get out of that mindset into the abundant mindset of moving an entire industry forward?
Yeah, it's a tough one, man, because if I look back at my own time span here, I've always thought that I've wanted to do something bigger than myself. That's always been something that's been a core part of me. However, I've still been guilty of one who falls into complacency, falls into some sort of level of comfortability. When I launched the business, which was about 15 years ago, my twins had just been born. I was laid off from Best Buy. I was doing B2B work with them, wrote a sales playbook. I was the first Geek Squad agent in Chicago. These are all fun stories that I could tell again on like a series of our episodes, right? If we did more at some point. However, when that happened, I started the business because I needed to. It just felt right at the moment. I had no income. I had my family of 2 became a family of 4 overnight, and I had to do something. So then once I started making money, which happened pretty quickly, because I just wanted to help people. I mean, sales is nothing more than a transference of trust. I can go on and on about sales too. Writing an ebook too, by the way, on sales, because I think it's just simple. It's about unreasonable goals. Anyways, it's like have the courage to have unreasonable goals, which applies to your question as well. And after that, dude, I got complacent, man. Because all of a sudden, I was making, we'll say around 100K at Best Buy. All of a sudden, I was making more than that, doing my own thing with maybe just one or two people in the company. And it was really like this consultancy. So for a period of about 4 or 5 years, I really was just kind of coasting along. And then I got really sick, man. I got really, really sick. A gangrenous gallbladder, almost died on the operating table. It was a rough patch. So coming out of that, that was, if you want to use the term wake up call, but it was more of like a realignment, because I mean, you're sitting there when you almost die and you're like, what the hell am I doing? Let's get back to the core of who I am. And I truly believe in the best in humanity to begin with. I might be an optimist that way, but I think that most of us, I hope so anyways, have core values that live inside of us. And when you actually seek out what those core values are, rather than letting all the noise around you start to pollute those things, you ask, that's how you get that mindset. How do you get that mindset? You actually start to listen to yourself, rather than everybody else who is around you. I think I actually reposted something from Gary Vee today. It was a bunch of fish that were, in a school that were swimming into a net to be captured, and one fish going the other direction. And it was like, stop following everybody else, because this is where everybody else is going. But that's the noise, man. So I think everybody can have the right mindset when they start to listen to themselves rather than all the noise and distractions around them. Focus on your values. You'll figure it out.
Focus on your values, listen to yourself. Awesome advice. You took a company public. How did you manage the stress of that with everything else going on in your life?
Holy hell. That was I'll say this, it was a bit of a nightmare, and a lot of individuals prior to that are like, you don't want to be, this is another life lesson. You don't want to be the CEO of a public company. It really sucks to be the CEO of a public company. And I would hear these things over and over and over again. And the difference though, is everybody who was telling me that, I would ask them like, oh, so you did it? So tell me about that. How'd it go for you? Like, well, I didn't do it. I'm like, all right. It was difficult to find those. And I did find a few, and I even ended up speaking with Glenn, the CEO of EXP, at the time, because one of their directors on their board was on my board for a little while. So I had a great connecting point in through that. And he was saying, he's like, you kind of got to be a little crazy. That's part of it. And I'm like, I get that, right? Because you have to be willing to step out into something that not many have before. But everybody told me about the stress and about, of course, all the cliche things that you could hear in your lifetime. So how do you do that and manage the stress? Dude, I have learned so much over this last year that regardless of the stress, because I can push past almost anything, I can keep going. It's the resilience of yourself that really will be tested in doing something like this. So if you can continuously focus back on your values, like I was saying, because your values will define your purpose. If you can continuously recenter that and realign yourself with that over the process, and also just stop fucking working. Like at one point, if it's like 9 o'clock at night and you're in the middle of an audit for a quarterly filing, whatever it is, like, oh, I got to get this done. That's still going to be there in the morning. And it's, if you're not in a position to where you're like on the gun, because I think something's happened and you have to put out fires from time to time, right? But regardless, the fire will still likely be there in the morning. That's one thing that I learned, is that there's still always going to be something that you have to address. So you start getting hit with all these things along the process, and there's a lot of lumps and bruises, man. But then somewhere through that process, over that 15 months that we just finished the process, we went public, right? That was the easy part. Dude, going public was the easy part. It was overnight with the reverse merger. I was sitting on a TV show, on David Meltzer's TV show, filming it in Las Vegas. And then all of a sudden I got the call from the attorney. He's like, okay, it's done. I'm sitting there filming a TV show, an entrepreneur TV show. I'm like, huh, that's weird. So then I turned to Dave. He's a friend of mine. I'm like, well, I'm public. He's like, oh man, congratulations. I'm like, it's just a little surreal, because negotiating the deal, yeah, that took a couple months and getting to the point. But then when it happened, it just happened. But one huge life lesson that I learned is that there are things like that, and the work comes after the event. Yeah, and that's what took place, is that it took 15 months to get everything in line to where we literally just finished that this past Friday. There was a lot of things along the way. So, shakeups in the audit industry. There was an acquisition that I had that went really, really bad that delayed things. We also fell into a cycle to where we had to switch auditors in the middle of something because of SEC regulations. Just a lot of stuff that you didn't know. Would I do it again? Yeah, I'm looking at the next one, right? Let's see what I can do 10 years from now. At the same time, it's like, would I do things a little differently? Of course I would, because I know more now than what I did before then. And that's coming back full circle due to the curiosity. I know I'm talking a lot, but the stress, that's the biggest thing that I learned, is that at some point you just have to stop working, and just be like, all right, I'm cool for today. And it's a rewiring thing, because the hustle, the grind, I don't think that is absolutely necessary to be successful. I think it's a toxicity that exists within the entrepreneurial culture right now, is this hustle, toxic grind that can exist, to be like, it's almost glorified. At the same time, let's not brag on that. Let's brag on how we became more efficient and actually took care of ourselves and stayed healthy and still worked out every morning and didn't die from a heart attack when you're 47. That you actually were able to be around for your kids. And you also took a company public. See how that's on the end of everything, like in priorities? That's the biggest thing I learned this last year, man, with all the stress.
How did that process change how you view yourself?
Man, it's I always knew I was resilient, but I had no idea what the limits of that was. And it's like, if I look at kids, right, I have this opinion of kids. I have 3, 2 are 17, one's 15. I was just talking with somebody today about, it's like, yeah, all my kids did the laundry when they were like 7, did their own laundry from age 7 on. It's like, I give a lot of credit to their mom for that, because we just threw everything we thought we could possibly throw on them at the earliest possible age. And it's just,
that's the title of your parenting book, right?
Yeah, there you go. Right. Yeah, exactly. But seriously, what I learned, it's like, it's just like, why baby talk? Similar scenario. It's like, why not speak to your kids in just regular language? Of course you can smile and you can have a different tone of voice, whatever, but regular language, it's the same thing. It's like, I don't think we give kids enough credit for what they can actually take on. It's like a 6-year-old today, might be playing on an iPad, whereas a 6-year-old 100 years ago was plowing a field. It's like, obviously kids can handle a lot more than I think parents give them credit to. Likewise, I think that each of us individually can handle a lot more than what we give credit to ourselves. So even though I already knew I was resilient, I always knew that I was a shark, right? I always knew that I had a big purpose and I wanted to do big things and I was going to do big things. I had no idea what the extent of that would actually be or how far I could actually push myself. I think we stop before we get to that red line. Just because we're freaked out. It's like, oh, I've never gone 6,000 RPM before. What's it gonna do? What am I gonna do? Right? It's like, what's it gonna be like? Oh, it's starting to sound a little loud. I don't know about this. I don't know if I can handle it. And then most, which I think is what separates the business owners from the entrepreneurs, most will back off and they'll be like, I'm cool here. So for me, this last year that I learned about me is like, I still have, even though I was resilient already, I still have way more in the tank than what I thought I did. So it's pushing your limits. And then it's like those that just keep getting better. We all have talents, man, but I think we have to stress ourselves a bit to actually see how far we can go.
I love that. What great advice. We know your time's incredibly valuable. We greatly appreciate you spending some of it with us. Rick Jordan, where can our listeners and viewers go to learn more about all things Rick?
Yeah, best place is Instagram. I mean, I have links on there too. Mr. Rick Jordan, same with LinkedIn on the business side, but everything is right there. I appreciate anybody coming to hear all the weird, crazy crap that comes out of my mouth, because it can be fun.
Awesome. And make sure to check out Rick's podcast as well. This has been Seth Greene for Sharkpreneur with Rick Jordan. Rick, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, my man.
Thanks everybody for watching or listening. We will talk to you or see you next time.
Why do so many businesses struggle while others seem to explode overnight? Do you wish you had the secret to this type of exponential growth? Now, I've scaled more than 20 businesses to over $100 million, and it's not just luck. In my new book with Mark Tim, Mentor to Millions, you'll learn the repeatable framework I use in all my business ventures for massive success. Order at kevinmentor.com and get over $1,000 in bonuses. Head to kevinmentor.com.